Dale Cowan, Senior Agronomist with Agris and Wanstead Cooperatives. This is the final day of the Great Lakes Grain Crop Assessment Tour. Just near Thamesville here today at one of our test plots. A bit of an overcast day, a little rain last night throughout the territory, and which brings us to the topic at hand is we've had a year of weather and a lot of wet weather early on. So I looked at our dashboard system and I just went around our territory and just started from rainfall from May 1 to yesterday. So in the Harrow area, 349 millimeters, Chatham area 332, Thamesville 269, Melbourne area 238, and the Brigden area 378. So on average, that's 317 millimeters. And this is a year when talking about averages really doesn't explain anything, because really the average doesn't account for any one of those areas for rainfall, but just gives you a general pattern. So what you look at next is, well, what was the distribution? And that's really where it tells the tale. So we look at Brigden, May and June were both wet. Lots of rainfall, very difficult getting the crops planted the first time, a lot of replant beans, so I just put the crop behind, and of course that's what we're seeing there now. And they had a few rain events later on, and you know, it's just struggled with a drier summer when we needed the rain, and then a few timely rains later on, and the rains that have come have been some pretty big events. And if we move to, say, example, the Harrow area, both the beginning and end of May were wet. And then June had an event at 40 millimeters, July had one at 20, August at 22 millimeters. So the distribution's a little better there, even though it was a little bit of a struggle to get things in on time. But the point there is, when we look at evapotranspiration and look at the rainfall versus evapotranspiration, 349 millimeters of rain in Harrow, and between evaporation and the plant transpiring water, 347. So it's been pretty well matched up to the water needs of the crop. And then if I look at the Thamesville area, where it was dry, 269 millimeters of rain and 426 millimeters of evapotranspiration. And what's ironic here, you would think that the corn would be struggling a little more in the Thamesville area, and some of it has with the dry weather, but this one particular site is going to be one in the top 10% of yield. So then it starts speaking to, well, where's the plant get its moisture from? Well, that's subsoil moisture that these crops are actually finding with the deep roots. So then it starts to speak to things like crop rotation. We're seeing the impacts of that. Tillage management, residue management, all those things that go into building soil structure and the soil's ability to hold on to water for later in the season. So we really are starting to see this thing we're referring to as soil health, or this all-encompassing aspect of good soil structure, lots of organic matter, some residue management, and being able to store water for later in the season. So there's more than just the rainfall here. We have to start looking at all the management aspects that go into managing a crop from beginning to end. So this is really, for me, starting to be very evident as we look at all the different sites we got yield assessments on, and start to dig a little deeper, look at not just rainfall, but some of the other practices on farm. And I think this is the real value in the crop tour, is really to understand what goes into yield.